Window capture? No, display capture maybe? Yeah. I'm gonna change the game. Just chatting. What is up, YouTube? We're watching this. The unluckiest deaths in history. Discuss potential has been censored that the original version be false flag and suitable for ads and nature. Okay. Gonna watch this. I need to wait. I need the audio in the VOD. Okay. Now it's François Hotel.
Ever read about the unusually tragic death of some historical figure, or even just the random old lady across the street and think, oh, that sucks? Well,
I don't read it. I used to be, thousands ways to die.
well, you're in for a few more of those. Starting off this list is François Vatel, one heck of a perfectionist. He was the maître d'hôtel, or maître d', for French nobility. In case you didn't know, a maître d' is the master of the house, basically a general in terms of waitstaff at a restaurant or overall event. They make sure that everything is in line from decorations to food and that all guests are always happy. Now, if you've ever worked in any form of customer service, you know how stressful this can be.
I work, and it's not just stressful. I'm losing my hair. I'm getting bald because of it. It's not just
especially when you can't tell your guests to frig off because they're literal royalty.
Oh,
unlike
yeah,
customers
that's
today
worse.
who just think they are. Francois was in a career of pure stress.
I don't think I had did I have any? I'm trying to think about like something that happened to me. Like like 2 days ago, I got robbed. That was crazy. Not like gunpoint or anything like that. I was just like, I'm serving coffee. I turn around and these two guys, one took a Kit Kat and the other one took some gum, like $5 worth of stuff, risking a lot to steal $5. I mean, it's kind of stupid, but those guys look stupid. I have my suspicions on one of them because the way he was acting because he was paying me for smokes, and the way he was acting, I was like, because they were touching that shit, and I was like, okay, you're kind of sus. I'm gonna ask the security guard to check the cameras to check, and the other guy that was with him, my customers were there, and they just saw, yeah, he just took them. Just took the gums. It was weird, but like they can't tell if he paid or not. You know what I mean? So I was like, huh, okay. I went to the security guard and they took a Kit Kat and some gum. All that.
But he was the best at what he did, having been formally recognized by many top chefs across France for his ability to ensure guest satisfaction. I mean, how often do you hear stories about royal servants? Almost never. Except for Francois. History often mistakes Francois for being a chef himself, but that was never the case.
Was that
he just
right?
handled everything in the front of house.
Was that Ratatouille?
Anyway, this story begins and ends all the way back in 1671 in Fancy Pants, France. It was at this time that France was experiencing a golden age under Supreme French King Overlord Leaderfella Louis XIV. France's and history's...
Didn't Louis XIV get his head cut off? Or was the 16?
Longest known reigning monarch to date. This big bushel of baguettes ruled for almost 72 and a half years.
72 and a half? That's a lot of time. Give me a second.
French power expanded across the world. Arts and culture were flourishing, and the wealthy were living in utmost extravagance. Sure, there were plenty of wars going on in the background, but that's for the poor people to worry about.
Nice.
With such mindless
That's what happens now.
pouring out of every orifice, parties, galas, celebrations, shindigs, and balls were just the norm. But these royal retreats demanded a
You see royalty, they're wearing dresses and wigs. Yeah.
professional to ensure that everyone kept a crusty yellow smile on their dusty white faces. That's where Francois came in. Having a strong resume of serving under notable French figures you've probably never heard of, like this guy and that guy, Francois was given the task of organizing a banquet in King Louis's honor for over 3,000 people. That's 3,000 of the most rich and powerful people of the age. You don't want to disappoint them, do you? You can't. It's not an option. Do you know what they would do to someone who messed up the king's banquet?
Yeah, probably get the head chopped off. There was 3,000 rich people back then. 3,000? Isn't that too much? Didn't they have like 100,000 people max? I'm just kidding. But 3,000 people that were rich? That's the 1%. That's a lot of people. Still a lot of people.
Well, that option wouldn't be invented for another 100 years, but it's a quick end no matter how you cut it. The feast was to last across 3 days, and Francois was given just 2 weeks to prepare. So with no time to waste, he nervously took to the task. Over the next 15 days, Francois managed to get all of his French ducks in a row.
I'm gonna guess how he got killed. What does it say? Too little, too late. One of the ducks hit him in the face. And just like, because they're, I believe, porcelain, so they just like, went through his head.
Drapes were draped, silverware sparkled, chandeliers shimmered, and guests were gobsmacked. All 6,000 of them. Yeah, over double the anticipated party size showed up. Luckily, there was still plenty of food to spare. But another kick in the dick for Francois was the fact that it was raining, canceling the planned fireworks for the evening, which bummed out several of the guests. Well, that's just uncontrollable circumstances, you might say, as you pull out your brown tooth. But not to Francois. Remember, he was a perfectionist, and things were not perfect. Besides these 2 minor infractions, the first day went off without a hitch, but the second day would prove to be Francois's last. In the morning, Vatel received devastating news. Only half of his fish order for the breakfast buffet had arrived. He knew that without the precious poisson, people would be palpably peckish. This was the...
You know what was... It's just saying he was late. I know the way you said, you know how you say late in French? Yeah. The R word. Yeah. The thing you call people when you're playing at Call of Duty without streaming.
Last straw.
Because they usually
Francois spiraled into a panic, knowing that he had failed in his duties and he would forever feel the crushing weight of his shame for the rest of his life. But the rest of his life wouldn't actually be that long, as shortly after receiving the news and breaking down into an inconsolable mess, Francois rushed into his bedchambers to right his wrong the only way he knew how. Standing by his bedside, he brandished his iconic ceremonial stabbing sword and rammed it through his own tummy. He laid in a puddle of his own blood, undiscovered for some time until, "Yo, Francois, the rest of the fish is here." Yeah, that's right. The remainder of the order arrived almost immediately after Francois decided to carry out a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
So he wasn't an overthinker? You can just wait 5 minutes? You know, I'm late with this. People are upset. I'm just gonna, I'm just gonna keep myself safe. That's, wow.
His body was then taken from the palace and buried in secret while the rest of the guests partied on.
Isadora Duncan.
Nearly every aspect of Isadora Duncan's life could be summarized by one word: tragic. Childhood? Tragic. Adult life? Tragic. Family? Tragic. Career? Successful and groundbreaking, but then tragic. All of this capped off by her sudden, unlucky, and tragic death.
Are we gonna
Born and raised in the sparkling cesspit that is San Francisco, California in the 1800s, things were already not off to a great start. She was the youngest of 4, with a loving mother and supportive and...
77 to 27. Is that 50 years? Angela Isadora Duncan. Is that 50, right? I'm not wrong. 87, 97, 07, 17, 27, yeah, 50.
Wealthy banker father, until his bank collapsed under mysterious and fraudulent circumstances, subsequently leading to a marital collapse under mysterious and infidelitous circumstances. He then died in a boat crash several years after that. It is said that his last words were somewhere in the ballpark of, So after Papa's
Gobble.
bank went rupt and her parents defaulted on their marriage, the struggles really stacked up. She lived with her mother and siblings, moving to Oakland, California to begin life anew. She attended school from ages 6 to 10, but dropped out, finding the schooling system restrictive, boring, and lame. Instead, Isadora and her siblings earned their daily bread by teaching the local yokels the art of dance. Thankfully, years of doing the hokey pokey allowed Isadora to turn herself around. After all,
Red Eyes Blood. I had those 2 cards. They were fucking awesome. I had those 2 Yu-Gi-Oh cards.
that's what it was all
And I played the Yu-Gi-Oh game as well on the PS1, I believe. Yeah, that was cool. When they could, what is it called? They can match together, you know, and form one. I think this is the way you could do it. Like, you can grab this one and this one and have like a 3, and there was another one, right?
about. She joined a formal theater company at the age of 19 to expand her art. Problem was, the extent of dance at the time was very rigid and emotionless. Instead, Isadora yearned for something a little bit more free-flowing and expressive. She wanted less of this, and a little bit more of this. But the dance community in America wasn't ready to pick up what she was throwing down, so she had to search for better opportunities abroad. Well, that was definitely a good
So America, being America, you show something new, you show something great, and they say, nah. Now they're going back to it.
She soon found herself dancing in the presence of wealth and royalty
Instead of just being normal.
London, oh, it's a beautiful dancer, isn't it? And Paris. I'm le deux fromage. Her revolutionary style took the world of dance by storm. With her newfound success, she wished to provide better opportunities for the youth, opportunities that she wished that she had as a spry sapling. In order to do so, she opened up an informal dance school in Berlin, Germany in 1904, which, along with teaching kids their ABCs and 1, 2, 3, also put interpretive dance on the menu, not as a profession, but as a hobby and method of expression. After about a decade, Isadora left to open up a second school in Paris after a certain Austria started getting hungry for conflict. Unfortunately, the new school didn't last very long as tensions escalated and the Great War broke out in Europe, so she fled back home to the US right when the getting was good. As for her personal life, her travels introduced her to many suitable bachelors across the art world. She found love multiple times, and Cupid shuffled into the sheets, popping out 3 kids. But of course, fate would have other plans for this happy chapter. For instance, one of her children died in infancy. The other 2 cruised along in a car with their caretaker and crashed into the River Seine. They drowned.
Really?
Isadora.
That kind of fucks me up a bit. Because I have a goddaughter, and she's around this age.
Spiraled into a deep depression in her later years
Understandable.
and fell out of the spotlight, her debts piling up as high as her empty liquor bottle.
Like, imagine you have a really shitty life, you finally have something to fight for. At 3 kids, you're making bank in school with the dances that your country didn't accept you for because they're fucking dumb, America being America. You do it, you have 3 kids, 1 passes away when he's just a baby. In this day and age, it was unfortunately normal. Now it's being more normalized as well because, I'm not gonna get into it because people get mad at me, but anti-vaxxers, fucking pieces of shit. They should get arrested for murder. That's all I'm saying. And then the 2 kids, she was already dealing with a baby passing away. I don't know if it was the first, it was the third one. Doesn't really matter. Still fucked up. But then the 2 kids just die in a car crash. In a car that goes into a river.
But this life of misfortune was about to be topped off with a disastrous bow. On September 14th, 1927 in Nice, France, Isadora was riding shotgun in a fancy car while wearing an abnormally long fancy scarf. Normally, the combination of heavy machinery and loose articles of clothing warrant a live leak watermark. And
he got caught in the wheel and he strangled her? Or just threw her away and got her neck snapped? Huh.
Poor Isadora
I'm
was
not
about to learn
apologizing
why.
for stopping.
As the vehicle
Pausing.
sped off and she bid her farewells, her fashionable fabric forged her fate. Her long scarf that was whipping in the wind became entangled in the rear tire of the car, wrapping around the rear axle and pulling tight. In an instant, the scarf became a noose, and Isadora's neck was snapped before she could even react. At just 50 years old, the spotlight faded on the inspirational dancer.
Tycho Brahe.
Now trust me, for the life of me, I really want to pronounce this guy's name as Tycho Brahe, but apparently the proper Danish pronunciation is Tycho Brahe. Like, listen to this.
Tycho Brahe.
Tycho Brahe. Tycho Brahe.
Tycho Brahe.
Person saying this doesn't even sound confident in their own pronunciation. Anyway, teeny tiny Tycho was the talk of the town back in the 16th century. He was renowned as one of the world's greatest astronomers and one of the last great astronomers before the invention of the telescope. So these guys were just raw dogging the heavens trying to figure it all out. Hey, is that a new star up there? Oh, where? Right over... Oh, nope. I lost it. But that, of course, didn't discourage the Celestial sillybillies from trying to figure out how the known universe worked. Or at
I like
least
this guy.
the human eye could see.
I'm gonna subscribe.
Born and heir to many of the Kingdom of Denmark's noble families, Tycho was loaded, and thus well-educated. He made several breakthroughs in the field of astronomy and even dabbled in astrology and alchemy. But we know those are more of pseudoscience poppycock. Well, unless you're a middle-aged woman who thinks that jerking a crystal with rainwater will make all of your wishes come true or whatever.
A new hand touches the beacon.
Despite his innovations of spotting new stars and measuring the skies with rather impressive accuracy, he still made
That's
the
funny.
oopsie of proposing his own geocentric model, which put the Earth in the center of the universe rather than the Sun. The
Oh, you're
planets
stupid.
revolved around the Sun, but the Sun revolved around the Earth. He almost had it. Don't worry though, Copernicus
So, the Earth, the Sun, and then the rest of them go around the Sun. Doesn't that mean that one of them would gonna hit Earth multiple times, or you can actually see? Imagine you're looking out there and you actually see a fucking planet covering the fucking hours, covering completely the sun and almost covering our skies. You know how terrifying that would be? The shit we usually see in others. Like you can see the actual universe without any stars and shit. Do you ever see other planets? You know, you sometimes see Mercury or Mars or some shit. It was one of them that you can see far, far away. You can see like a little dot. Imagine if you can see that shit almost close to you. You know how you see the moon? Imagine the moon like a million times bigger.
took home the bluer branches
The ads get all laggy and shit, but the actual video doesn't add. So I appreciate
of
that.
science is that there's a lot to discover as you put the fundamental pieces together, which grants you a lot of leverage over outsiders looking in who just don't understand it quite yet. That being the case, many higher nobles and even
Supermodel?
the king himself applauded
love a
Tycho and his
supermodel.
efforts, just stuffing his pockets with money to fund any and all research that he desired to advance the field of astronomy.
I love supermodels.
What's that? You've charted over 700 stars? Beautiful. There's things called supernovas? Fantastic. Comets are
great.
just burning bits of rock? Amazing. Can you leave? Danish King Frederick II was so tickled by Tycho's work that he granted him an estate on an island to build his own personal, customized observatory so that he could look up at the sky in complete solidarity. And so he did. For about 21 years, Tycho plotted the planets, tracked the transits, and crunched the calculations.
Okay.
Everything seemed great. At least until King Frederick bit the disease dust and his 11-year-old war-obsessed, noble-hating son took over and threatened to seize Tycho's land and assets. Not wanting to deal with this two-body problem, the astronomer said screw it and shifted his orbit over to Prague, where he was invited to build another observatory. This time, however, he took on an apprentice, one Johannes Kepler, who would go on to influence many famed physicists like Galileo and Sir Isaac Newton. Together, the two continued where Tycho left off.
Yeah,
before
that's
getting
what
booted
I
from
was.
his Tower of
That was
Solitude.
that
But everything
exactly
came
what
to
I
a
was
halt
laughing
in
about.
1601 when attending a banquet. According to Kepler, Tycho was in agonizing discomfort. You all right? Nope.
He was
got it.
11.
Real bad. Dude, just get up and go. Nope, bad manners. Gotta hold it. All right, don't complain to me when, you piss yourself. Ooh, lordy. Yo, Tico. Tico eventually headed home to drain his dragon, but at that point, he would barely even dribble. Over the next several days, the pain got excruciatingly worse, and there was no relief in sight. Just 11 days after holding in his pee to avoid bad etiquette at dinner, Tycho Brahe died of a completely avoidable bladder infection. Remember, fellas and fellettes, listen to what your body's telling you. Otherwise, you might just piss it off.
Cornelia Bandy. Oh, okay. She must be... Okay, she got burned. You have to pee. Go pee. Do not hold it. Grab a diaper.
For poor Cornelia Zangaribandi, little is really known about her life, as the only remarkable thing about the wrinkly Diovelina was her mysterious, sudden, and fiery fate. That's because Cornelia is one of the unlucky few cases of a phenomenon known as spontaneous human combustion. A cause of death in which the victim suddenly bursts into flames, seemingly unprovoked or without an obvious cause, and is reduced to nothing but a pile of ash. But when you really dig deep into the dirt of these cases, you start to recognize some patterns. For one, the victims are almost always alcoholics to some degree and recently horked down a medically inadvisable amount of booze. That's the spirit, and that's the wine. Next, the victims tend to be elderly females. Not that it necessarily
Doesn't mean that he has some companion health issues. I was actually thinking about like maybe he had like kidney stones or some shit. It was too big that was like covering everything, but I don't know if that's no, but he was like he was holding his pee for too long and he went to pee, but he took so long. Yeah, that is true. That is true. Back then, you can, get your head cut off, and you say, "Oh, he was stung by a bee."
makes much of a difference, but
That's how he
combustible
died.
Cornelia here was 66 years young when she attempted to cosplay as a phoenix. Additionally, there was always an
Old bitches. Okay. People combusted were alcoholics, drank recently. Old bitches is external initial source. So just smoker who usually drinks a lot and get. Oh, I'm aware. I'm aware about the buried alive people and the little bells.
external source of ignition, which,
I'm glad.
in my opinion, completely invalidates the whole spontaneous aspect.
We
So what
progress
did the
a lot.
heck happened to her Cornelia? Well, on one fateful night in 1731, the Italian noblewoman had just finished off a non-stereotypical meal. Countess Cornelia
Oh, okay. Let me ask. What the fuck is this? Obviously, meatballs, pizza. What is this? I have no idea what this is. It's probably wine. No. But what is this? I don't.
The Italian noblewoman had just finished off a non-stereotypical meal. Countess Cornelia was reported by her maid as acting rather, quote, dull and heavy, slomping around to and fro after downing a hefty heap of brandy. The maid helped the inebriated elder to her room, and the two spent several hours chit-chatting and shooting the shit. The Countess was also a creature of habit, habitually applying some of her own personal ointment across her withering frame, an icky-sticky camphorated brandy mix which helped with her pain relief. After some bobbitying and a bit of
Adelaide Brown,
boogieing,
can only
the
come
maid
in
left the Countess's room
know.
after she boarded the train to Sleepy Time
1700s
Junction.
could be.
And so, all was well. Until the next morning. Cornelia was noted to be sleeping in a bit later
Some
than
huge
usual, but
bitches.
that was to be expected after how heavily she drank the night before. The maid eventually entered the Countess's chambers to find something horrifyingly perplexing.
The
According
candles?
to the eyewitness, this is what she found. 4 feet distance from the bed was a heap of ashes, 2 legs untouched from the foot to the knee with their stockings on. Between them was the lady's head, whose brains, half of the back part of the skull, and the whole chin were burnt to ashes, amongst which were found 3 fingers blackened. All the rest was ashes. A small oil lamp on the floor was covered with ashes, but no oil in it. The Countess
Necrata?
was dead.
Never
The
heard of it.
curious part is that no other pieces of
Oh, that was
furniture in
just
the room
cheese.
seemed to be affected by the suspected blaze. Instead, everything was draped in a greasy, smelly soot. Now, it may have appeared as a mysterious death to the people of the time, but us modern folk live in an age of true crime podcasts and such, so it's pretty easy to piece together what probably happened.
The squirrel did it?
Nevertheless, it's a pretty tragic way to go, but probably a good reminder to never handle open flames after converting your body into a human Molotov cocktail.
I'm gonna have to cut all of this. Emperor Humayun.
The Mughal Empire was one of the richest and longest ruling empires in the history of India, but it was almost lost in its infancy. Inheriting the newly founded empire in 1530 from his dad at the age of 22, Emperor Humayun bit off way more than he could chew. He was an inexperienced ruler and lacked a lot of the self-confidence and leadership qualities that you'd expect from an emperor. But he was the eldest son, so it all went to him. Gotta love primogeniture. That, my good fellas and fellettes, is the word of the day. Now, with it being a new empire and all, there was a problem with consolidating power. Lots of the local governors and leaders resisted Mughal control. To help disperse some of that responsibility, Humayun granted some land to his 3 younger half-brothers, all of whom were little heads, constantly undermining their older brother to the point of collapsing the empire as a whole. Not far off, another ruler had taken notice of the young emperor's power struggle. This guy was Sher Shah Suri of Bahar, and he saw quite the opportunity in front of him. Not wanting to waste any time, he quickly gathered his army and made a push for Agra, the capital of the Mughal Empire, and one sheep's onomatopoeia away from being a Disney IP. Humayun retaliated, and the two clashed on the battlefield.
Is that an elephant?
After a few skirmishes, the two agreed to a diplomatic end to the fighting. Sher Shah was given control over some territory in exchange for a peaceful retreat. He agreed, but since the deal did not explicitly state no takes.
So he fought against someone who has no idea what he's doing, who's like really like weak, and he still didn't win? Damn, you suck.
Backsies, the conniving little devil immediately reneged on the agreement and slaughtered the Mughal army, with Humayun barely escaping across the Ganges. The retreating emperor pleaded with his 3 brothers for support, but they were too busy negotiating with Sher Shah over what land they would receive after their brother's demise.
Of course.
I told you they were shitheads. Unfortunately, Humayun did lose his empire in 1540 and was exiled to Persia for 15 years. But while in Persia, he was able to use some charisma to persuade the Safavid emperor to provide some military support so he could go back and kick the Shah's shit in, which is what happened. The Mughal Empire was restored in 1555 and all was right again. That is, until about a year later in 1556, where Humayun met a rather silly demise. When leaving his library with a handful of books, the emperor had to walk down a bunch of stone steps. Since OSHA training wasn't yet mandatory or invented, Humayun was unaware of the dangerous predicament he had put himself in. After hearing the call for daily prayer, his own muscle memory took over and he knelt down to acknowledge that call, as he did on a regular basis. But this time, he tripped, slipped, and tumbled down the entire stone stairwell, bashing his melon open on a stone corner. The poor guy died 3 days later of his injuries. But at least the Mughal Empire reigned for another 300 years, so that's a positive.
Yeah.
And so there you have it. Remember, luck isn't always on your side. But this video's on my side, so go check it out. Also, remember to subscribe. I'll see you over there.
He did all that and just fell and just hit his head. That's crazy. I don't know. Maybe they had a different type of praying. I think they do. I think Hindus, they do have something like that. The most religious ones. We can look. Prayer. Oh shit, what the fuck? Yes, they do, but they have a lot of flexibility. So it could be, you know, they usually do. Thank you for the follow. Should be. They do have, but it's not like. He did, but he hit his head. There was a lot of flexibility until he reached the floor and reached the ground, and he hit when he hit the Goddamn. Yeah. Should have done a lot more yoga. But he didn't. Didn't do. Yeah. His skull was too stiff. Too stony. Okay. Let's see if I can play this goddamn game.